I can feel it in my gut, a certainty I can't shake. Mia, the girl I grew up with, the girl who was supposed to be my future, is slipping away. She's my next-door neighbor. My other half since we were kids. Her family has 2 daughters. Chloe, the older one, 3 years ahead of us, and then there's Mia, the same age as me. Our parents aren't just neighbors, they're colleagues at the same firm. Best friends for what feels like forever. So naturally, Chloe, Mia, and I grew up inseparable. We ate together, walked to school together, every memory I have, they're in it. That is, until Chloe left for college on the East Coast. The hazy, half-formed crush I'd carried for her dissolved into a quiet, distant longing. When it was just Mia and me, everything shifted. We were 16, that awkward, intense age when every emotion feels bigger than life. I fell for her hard. Maybe it was the lifetime of shared history, maybe it was how genuinely beautiful she was, or maybe she just embodied everything I found attractive. Whatever the reason, she was all I saw. From the start of junior year, the only thing I wanted was for her to be my girlfriend. But Mia was this strange mix of romantic and pragmatic. She'd hint she felt the same, then shut it down with, "We're too young. We can't get serious yet." I still remember one ridiculously sunny afternoon. I was driving her to the library in my beat-up old sedan. We grabbed a table under an air conditioning vent, and the cool air blew strands of her hair across her face. She looked so peaceful, so perfect, I just stared, and before I even understood why, the words I'd been holding back tumbled out. "Mia, will you be my girlfriend?" The second I said it, regret flooded me. My eyes darted around, terrified someone had overheard, but thankfully we were tucked away in a secluded corner. I looked back at Mia, my heart pounding against my ribs. She just stared wide-eyed, silent. I couldn't say another word. I just waited for her answer. "We're still so young," she finally said. Her first words hit me like ice water. She's going to say no. A bitter taste filled my mouth. I ducked my head, already rehearsing how to play it off as a joke. But then she continued, and I looked up. "If you ask me again after graduation, on the 50-yard line in front of the whole school, I might just say yes." Before I could even process it, she stuck her tongue out playfully, a bright, beautiful smile spreading across her face. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, lighting up the blush on her cheeks and the tips of her ears, now a deep red. A wave of pure joy washed over me. I shot up from my chair. If we hadn't been in a silent library, I probably would have screamed, "Deal." Instead, I managed to say it with all the excitement I couldn't contain. "Deal. I'll give you the most epic proposal this school has ever seen." We were 17, the age where love feels like an unbreakable fairy tale. From that day on, Mia and I had this unspoken understanding. We drove to school together, came home together, shared milk teas, did homework side by side. Our bond felt deeper, more real than ever. I was convinced that with our shared history and first love, we'd be holding hands forever. But by the second half of senior year, the perfect picture started to smudge. It started with a sophomore named Josh. He saw Mia once and was instantly infatuated. He knew I was in the picture, so he couldn't be direct. Instead, he engineered chance encounters, waiting on our route to school, showing up outside our classroom between periods, bumping into us on the way home. Those calculated coincidences, sprinkled with little gifts and constant compliments, slowly wore Mia down. She'd always been a sucker for big romantic gestures. It was why she wanted me to propose in front of everyone. And I'll admit, I wasn't smooth. I couldn't flatter her the way Josh did. I didn't have his shameless persistence. But I did have one strength: knowing when to cut my losses. I knew Mia better than anyone. The moment I saw her start to waver, I began pulling my feelings back, redirecting all that energy into studying. My dad always told me, if you feel insecure next to someone you like, you don't spiral, you work on yourself. Spiraling just makes them lose respect for you. Self-improvement is the only way to close the distance. Maybe he'd seen all along that Mia wasn't the type to settle down easily. Soon, Mia started letting Josh join us for lunch. She still sat next to me, but her laughter, her attention, it was all on him. Watching her light up for him felt like a stab in the heart at first, but eventually dulled into a familiar ache. It's not like I didn't say anything. I told her she was getting too close, but she just waved it off. He's just a sophomore, Leo. I'm not going to fall for him. Her words left me speechless. You won't fall for him? The way you look at him says you already have. My heart ached, but I forced myself to stay calm. If something pure was already tainted, it was time to let it go. What isn't meant to be yours will never be yours. Letting go is the best way to start over. So I shut everything out and threw myself into SAT prep and college applications. My conversations with Mia grew shorter, less frequent. She barely noticed. Even though we still sat side by side in class, she spent every spare moment rushing to the hallway to meet Josh, leaving me alone at my desk, grinding through practice tests. Mia and her sister Chloe were alike in one way. They were both naturally smart. Mia could breeze through classes with me and still beat me by a solid margin on every test. If I wanted Northgate University, where Chloe went, I'd have to work twice as hard. Stacks of practice exams, dozens of dead pens. They were my proof. I thought about calculus problems while eating dinner. Mia pointed it out once or twice before giving up and focusing on Josh. At night, I'd bury myself in books at my desk. Sometimes, when I was tired, I'd glance at the window next door. Mia's room. She used to sit at her desk facing her window too. Whenever I looked up, she'd somehow sense it. She'd smile or make a goofy face, and it would make my whole night, pushing me to study harder. But now her chair was empty. She was probably texting Josh. Even though I decided to move on, a sour knot twisted in my stomach. I'd shake my head, remind myself to focus on my parents, on how hard they worked. No matter how exhausted they were, they always came home and cooked dinner. When I tried to help with dishes, my mom would gently push me back toward my books. Your only job is to study. To give me an edge, my dad even spent a fortune on an online tutor to cover my weakest subjects. I overheard them one night. It cost him 2 months' salary for a few weeks of lessons. Also, I could get a slightly higher score. After that, I went back to my desk, focused harder than ever, and stopped looking out the window. As deadlines got closer, Mia started complaining in the passenger seat of my car. You've been acting weird lately. I just said, it's crunch time. I don't have the energy for anything else. She scoffed. You're not seriously still trying for Northgate, are you, Leo? My sister's way smarter than me, and she barely got in. Just let it go. We should be aiming for state school. That's what she said to me. I glanced in the rearview mirror and caught the look in her eyes. Pity, bordering on contempt. In that moment, she was looking down on me. It's just a goal, I replied flatly, refusing to argue. My practice scores were still about 200 points below Northgate's average. She was right. It was a long shot. Mia seemed to realize she'd overstepped and started to say something to backtrack, but just then Josh pulled up alongside us on his bike. Her attention shifted instantly the rest of the way. She laughed and joked with him through the window while I drove in silence. She might have been sitting in my car, but in reality, she was with another guy. When Josh even had the nerve to ask if she wanted a ride on the back of his bike, she actually hesitated before saying no. The final week before applications were due, Josh came looking for Mia after school. Mia, he said, using that overly familiar tone, you'll be gone at college soon. Can I at least be the one to take you to and from school for this last week? Mia had once told me no guy besides me or her dad would ever be allowed to call her by her full first name like that. But she didn't even notice. She just glanced at me, conflict written all over her face. It's fine, I said without looking up from my book. You go with him. It'll save me some gas and give me more time to study. She hesitated for another moment, then agreed. For that entire week, she rode on the back of Josh's bike. I started leaving for school a few minutes earlier each day, deliberately avoiding them. The first morning, Mia stormed into class and glared at me. I glanced at her once, then turned back to my work. We barely spoke that week. At lunch, she sat with Josh. My friends kept asking what was going on, and I brushed it off, saying Mia and I were just neighbors. With my mind clear of distractions, I focused completely on my applications. When the deadline finally arrived, my parents checked and rechecked my backpack for my laptop and login info. My heart filled with nothing but gratitude for them. You can do this, I told myself, walking into the computer lab. Surprisingly, I felt calm as I filled out the forms and attached my essays. I actually enjoyed the sense of finality. After 3 intense hours of submitting applications, my parents didn't ask if it was hard. They just pulled me into a huge hug and started talking about where we should go for a celebratory trip. I smiled and said I wanted to sleep, then relax for a few days. My dad clapped me on the shoulder and my mom hurried me into the car. Back home, I crashed and slept until I woke up naturally, feeling completely refreshed. The tension of the last year had finally lifted. I lay in bed, stretching with no desire to get up. Eventually, I rolled out around noon when I heard voices in the living room. Mia's parents were over, planning a joint family vacation with my mom and dad. When they saw me, their faces lit up. They asked why I hadn't been over to see Mia lately. I smiled and said studying had been more important, but now that applications were in, I'd have more time. Mia's mom, her eyes crinkling with a smile, pulled me down to sit beside her. She asked where I wanted to go. I thought for a second, then said, maybe a trip to see the national parks out west like Yosemite. Her smile widened. She exchanged a glance with her husband and said Mia had suggested the exact same thing. So it was decided. Both families would go to Yosemite for a week. Chloe would be home in a couple of days, and we could all go together. It had been a long time since we'd done something as a group. 2 days later, Chloe was back, as gentle and warm as ever. The first thing she did was hand me a small box. Inside was a limited edition action figure I'd wanted for ages. I carefully set it down and, in a burst of excitement, gave her a quick, tight hug. Then I realized what I'd done and immediately let go, just in time to see Mia watching us with a sour expression. "It's okay, Leo," Chloe said with a soft laugh. "It's not like you haven't hugged me before." Her words made me blush. Looking at her fair, pretty face, my heart did a little flip. When we set off, both families in their cars, Mia didn't come over to ride with me like she always used to. My mom, noticing ours only had 3 people, jokingly called out, asking if one of them wanted to join us to liven things up. To my surprise, Chloe started walking over. Seeing that, Mia jumped out of her car and ran to ours too. So I ended up sitting in the back, sandwiched between the 2 sisters. The atmosphere, though, was anything but harmonious. I kept turning toward Chloe, asking about college life. She answered with gentle warmth, sharing funny stories and interesting details. We talked and laughed easily, and the natural comfort between us seemed to irritate Mia, though no one paid her any attention. I was completely absorbed in Chloe, the big sister who had always looked out for me. The months apart hadn't created any distance at all. The trip was a blast for everyone except Mia, who seemed in a constant bad mood. Her mom scolded her a few times, but it didn't make a difference. The only time her expression changed was when her phone buzzed, and she'd retreat to a corner, smiling and texting for hours. Chloe watched her thoughtfully, then shifted her gaze toward me. But I was too busy taking in the majestic valley views to notice. The week flew by. On the drive home, I grinned like an idiot at a photo on my phone, a picture of Chloe and me on a boat on one of the lakes. I was pointing excitedly at something in the distance, and she was looking at me with a soft, gentle smile. The affection in her eyes was captivating. The picture radiated effortless intimacy. There were plenty of photos from the trip, some with my parents, some with hers, but only a few with Chloe, and just one with Mia. A candid shot her mom had taken. In it, Mia looked distant, her attention glued to her phone. I was turned toward Chloe, and though we were only a foot apart, we might as well have been in different worlds. When Mia saw that photo later, she froze. She looked at me with a flicker of guilt, but I was too busy admiring the pictures on my phone to care. After that, Mia started coming over all the time. She'd hang out at my house or invite me over for dinner. I didn't refuse, but I kept a careful, polite distance. I'd go to dinner, be civil when she came over. But the easy intimacy we once had was gone. We were just friends. Mia's mood soured, though she tried to act cheerful around me. This went on for a few days. Then, on the morning we had to go to school to officially accept our college offers, Mia was waiting for me at my door, a conflicted look on her face. "Let's go," I said, ignoring her expression and patting the passenger seat of my car. "Leo, are you going to keep your promise?" The sun was bright, a light breeze blowing. Halfway to school, Mia suddenly wrapped her arms around my waist from the passenger seat. Her voice was thick with emotion I couldn't quite place. She was holding on so tight it was actually hard to drive. I told her to let go, but she wouldn't. So I pulled over to the side of the road. We made a deal. You can't go back on your word. Her eyes were rimmed red, her hair a mess in the wind, giving her this fragile beauty. I looked at this girl I'd known my whole life. For a fleeting moment, I felt the impulse to give in, to be reckless one more time. I didn't want to lose her. She was my entire youth. "Okay," I finally said, my voice low after a long internal battle. When her expression shifted to one of pleading, I decided to give her one last chance. If she agreed to be my girlfriend and promised to keep her distance from other guys, maybe we could make it work. When we got to the school gym, my guidance counselor spotted me and immediately pulled me aside, talking excitedly. Mia's phone rang, and since it was after graduation, no one cared. She glanced at the screen, said she had to use the restroom, and hurried off. My counselor was practically glowing as he gushed about my final SAT scores, announcing them proudly to everyone in earshot. My classmates stared in shock. I had jumped over 200 points for my last practice test. Getting into Northgate wasn't a long shot anymore. It was a sure thing. I submitted my acceptance, but Mia still hadn't come back. Pulling out my phone, I called her. It rang several times before she finally picked up. The background was noisy. She said she was on the football field and would be right back, then hung up. With nothing else to do, I grabbed her acceptance form and went to find her. When I got to the field, I saw a large crowd gathered in the middle. Mia stood in the center of it all, the focus of everyone's attention. Josh was in front of her, holding a huge bouquet of flowers, saying something. It was clearly a public confession. Mia bit her lip, looking torn, not giving him an answer. I thought for a second, then reached into my pocket. Inside was a delicate silver necklace I had bought a long time ago. It wasn't expensive, but Mia had once pointed it out, saying how much she loved it but couldn't afford it with her allowance. Back when she was my whole world, I had filed that moment away. It was time to make good on my promise. The choice was hers. "Mia, I really like you. Will you be my girlfriend?" I strode forward, walking right past Josh as if he didn't exist, and held out the open box to her. Josh's face darkened. When he saw the flicker of delight in Mia's eyes, he panicked. He whispered something to her that I couldn't hear. But whatever it was, her expression shifted. Her eyes darted to a girl standing nearby. And then, Mia reached out and took the flowers from Josh. She didn't say a word, but the message was unmistakable. I let out a dry, self-deprecating laugh. "Well, Mia, I kept my promise." I tossed the necklace box onto the grass, shoved her acceptance form into her hand, and walked away without looking back. I could feel the eyes of the other students on me. Pity, disdain, contempt. I felt nothing. I had honored my word. She had thrown away her last chance. From now on, we were just neighbors. For someone like me, who valued emotional loyalty above all else, I had already bent my own rules for her. This erased whatever was left. Mia didn't follow me. I didn't return to the gym. My business there was done. I just got in my car and drove home. "Leo, why did some other boy drop me off? Were you being difficult again?" My mom asked, clearly displeased I hadn't brought her back. I explained Mia had something to take care of, so I came home first. My mom gave me a thoughtful look, sighed softly, and let it go. It wasn't long before Mia showed up in my room, looking at me cautiously. Leo, Josh's sister, was there. I was afraid he'd be embarrassed, so that's the only reason I did it. Don't be mad. I almost laughed at the explanation. Turning to study her face, I saw she couldn't meet my eyes. Then she moved closer, grabbing my arm and whining playfully. Oh, come on, Leah. I know I messed up. It was just this once. I promise it'll never happen again. Okay, just ask me one more time. I'll say yes, I swear. Her soft, pleading voice only made my skin crawl. The thought that she probably used the same tone with Josh filled me with irritation. My expression must have been colder than I realized, because she stared at me in disbelief. Just then, my mom walked in. Mia didn't dare say more. My mom, seeing her, cheerfully invited her to stay for dinner. Mom, Mia has plans later. She can't stay. I cut in before Mia could accept. The look on her face was pained, but in front of my mom, she could only force a smile, say a reluctant goodbye, and leave. Not long after, my phone started blowing up with texts from her. Long, rambling essays I had no desire to read. Excuses about the situation, about our childhood bond, about how she was just trying to spare Josh's feelings. I replied with a single sentence. Did you ever stop to think that maybe I would be embarrassed? Then I put my phone down and didn't read another message she sent. For the rest of the summer, I worked a rotating shift job at a mall a few towns over. The few times Mia came by, I was always at work. We didn't see each other once all summer. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't reply to her texts. The first time we finally crossed paths was after I got my first real paycheck and took Chloe out to celebrate. Mia tagged along, looking nervous but excited. She kept trying to make conversation. I wasn't rude, but my answers were short and non-committal. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she ignored it each time. With Chloe there, she couldn't bring up what had happened, but she kept throwing me guilty looks. Chloe, for her part, seemed oblivious to the tension. Her eyes stayed on the city traffic, occasionally reminding us to be careful. Then Mia's ringtone went off. She rejected the call twice. The third time she glanced at me, saw I wasn't paying attention, and answered in a hushed, annoyed tone. Whatever was said on the other end made her face fall. She hung up, conflicted, then flagged down a cab. A friend of mine just got into town. I have to go meet them, she said hurriedly, then left, leaving Chloe and me standing there. Chloe didn't seem bothered by her sister's abrupt departure. Instead, she casually took my hand. There's too much traffic here. I'll feel better holding on. It felt like 6 or 7 years ago, when Chloe, who had hit her growth spurt early, would hold my hand on the way home from school. Back then, it felt safe. Now, it made my heart race. Her hand was so soft in mine, a gesture of easy intimacy, so different from anything I'd ever shared with Mia. I had booked a private room at a nice restaurant near the mall and ordered all of Chloe's favorite dishes. After we ate, I paid the bill without a second thought. This place is way too expensive, Chloe said, frowning at the receipt. Don't come here again. If you want to eat this stuff, I can make it for you at home. It's fine, I said with a huge grin. The whole point of getting a summer job was so I could treat you to a nice dinner. This meal meant something different. It was the first time I had ever treated Chloe with money I had earned myself. Afterward, we walked through the mall. Chloe stopped at one of the counters, looked for a while, and then bought a watch. When I saw the price tag, over $1,000, my jaw dropped. This is an investment. It'll last for years. Not like spending a fortune on a single meal, she said with a playful smirk, rolling her eyes in a way that was still ridiculously charming. I was stunned. A light blush colored her cheeks, but she ignored it, carefully fastening the watch on my wrist before paying for it with a satisfied smile. On our way out, we saw Mia. She was holding hands with Josh, and they were talking to another girl I immediately recognized as Josh's sister. Chloe looked at them, then turned back to me. I felt nothing but Chloe's brow furrowed. Mia, she called out, walking straight toward them. When Mia saw us, her face went pale. She immediately dropped Josh's hand and rushed over, as if terrified we would talk to them. Josh, his arm in a sling, scowled at us. My friend had to leave, and I was on my way to find you guys when I ran into them. So I stopped to talk for a minute, Mia said quickly. She explained a little too quickly. then tried to pull us away. Instinctively, I pulled my arm back, and for a second a hurt look flashed across her face. Josh's sister walked over, gave a quick hello, then hurried off with her brother. Mia tried to convince us to go shopping, but both Chloe and I said we were tired. With no choice, she headed home with us. When we parted ways, Mia gestured at her phone, signaling me to check my messages. I ignored her. As the semester drew near, I arrived at the Fong's house with my suitcase in tow. You too, Mia stammered when she saw Chloe and me standing there with our luggage. I just smiled and held up my Northgate University acceptance letter. Time to head to campus. Chloe and I were traveling together. The sight of that letter drained the color from Mia's face. Her shock turned to devastation, and then tears welled in her eyes. Leo, you promised we'd go to the same college. Sorry, I said calmly. I never said that. That day when I said if you asked me in front of the whole school, I'd say yes, and then we'd go to college together. Did you forget? First, I said, ticking a finger off, you rejected my proposal. Second, I only said we'd go to college. Not the same college. Since she was spilling our private promises out loud where our parents could overhear, I didn't mind being direct. Luckily, her parents weren't in the room. No, Leo, you can't do this. If you leave, what about me? Are you saying you want a long-distance relationship for 4 years? For once, I was genuinely baffled. You rejected me. We're not even together. What long-distance relationship? You turned me down. What are you talking about? I grabbed my suitcase, along with Chloe's, and headed for the door. Mia grabbed my arm, clinging tightly. You're joking, right? You're just taking your sister to the airport. There's no way your grades were good enough for Northgate. She looked desperate, her eyes searching for some excuse, anything that would make this a bad joke. Outside, my dad pulled up in the car and honked for us to hurry. I've never lied to you, I said, pulling my suitcase out the door. I didn't give Mia another glance as I loaded the car. Chloe sighed, patted her sister's shoulder, and then climbed into the car with me. Mia just stood there on the porch, frozen, unable to process what was happening. She watched us until the car disappeared from sight. It was peak move-in season, so traffic was heavy. My phone buzzed non-stop. I didn't need to check. I knew it was Mia. She had been distracted before the exams, and her dream of Northgate had slipped away. She ended up at the local state university. 4 years apart would probably give her time to understand what our relationship really was. As for me, I was too excited to finally be heading to college. Not even traffic could dampen my mood. At the train station, my dad saw us off. He told me to study hard and to take care of Chloe. I promised I would. Seeing the slight stoop in his shoulders, I pulled him into a hug. Don't worry, Dad. I'm grown up now. I can take care of myself. You and Mom, just take care of yourselves at home. As the train slowly pulled away, he stood on the platform waving. A lump formed in my throat. After a long journey, Chloe and I stepped onto Northgate's campus. She guided me through registration and helped me settle into my dorm, even making my bed for me. My new roommates watched with a mix of envy and admiration, whispering that my girlfriend was thoughtful and beautiful. I didn't bother correcting them. A part of me was thrilled. Later, I helped Chloe move into her dorm, lugging her heavy suitcase up 5 flights of stairs. She pulled out a tissue and gently wiped the sweat from my forehead. Just then, her roommates arrived and noticed how naturally close we were. They pulled Chloe aside, grilling her about our relationship. I didn't know what she told them, but they kept sizing me up. As she unpacked, 2 more roommates showed up. The 3 of them teased her right away, insisting she treat them to dinner. Without hesitation, she agreed. That's how I found myself at dinner with 4 girls from the senior dorm. From then on, Chloe and I slipped into a routine. We ate together in the dining hall and took walks around campus in the evenings. Soon the rumor that we were a couple spread like wildfire. I found out when a friend saw us walking together and teased me. I was about to explain, but Chloe looped her arm through mine. That settled it. My friend grinned, cracked a couple more jokes, and left us alone. Chloe's cheeks flushed. She explained that guys had been relentlessly hitting on her and she needed me to act as a shield. Well, if I'm your shield, I'll never get a girlfriend, I joked. Maybe you should just be my girlfriend for real, Chloe. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, so softly I almost didn't catch it, she whispered, "Okay, okay." I stopped walking, stunned. "Don't forget I grew up with you too," she said bravely, meeting my eyes with her gentle conviction. "Doesn't that make us childhood sweethearts too? Why can't I like you?" I just can't believe it," I stammered. "Chloe, you're so beautiful and smart. Why would you like me?" Truth was, Chloe was even prettier than her sister. Her figure was better, her temperament calmer. She was always the one who gave in, who looked out for both Mia and me. "Leo, you're great too. You're tall and handsome, and you got into Northgate same as me. Your grades are just as good as mine." She rushed to list my good qualities, refusing to let me put myself down. I was so touched I just pulled her into a hug, an act that felt natural after a lifetime of doing it. "Thank you for liking me, Chloe." And just like that, with no grand gestures or dramatic confessions, Chloe and I were officially together. We just hadn't told our families yet. A couple months later, Chloe started an internship. To stay close, she found a company near campus. At first, she commuted from her dorm, but the late nights made it difficult. Eventually, she decided to rent an apartment. When she asked if I wanted to move in with her, I was consumed by the thought. Images of living together, sharing meals, waking up side by side, flooded my mind. I immediately agreed. My goofy excitement made her laugh. After looking at several places, we found a small 60-square-meter apartment, just big enough for two. We bought little things we liked, decorations to make it feel like ours. Standing there, I felt like I was in a dream. I'm living with Chloe. The reality hit me when she stepped out of the bathroom after a shower, cheeks flushed, telling me shyly it was my turn. I practically sprinted inside. From that day on, we were like a married couple. She rushed home early to cook for me, and I surprised her with little gifts. Because we knew each other so well, we never fought. We were just perfectly compatible. Sometimes I cooked her favorite meals, setting the table with flowers before she came home. Other times, she surprised me with a jersey for my favorite team or a new action figure. Happy times flew by. Before we knew it, winter break had arrived. After one last dinner in our apartment, we shut the windows, turned off the water, unplugged everything, and took one last lingering look at our little home. Then, hand in hand, we walked out the door. Our new beginning would be on pause for a month. On the train ride home, I held her in my arms, feeling. It felt like we had a million things to say. My parents kept texting, asking when we'd arrive, and I patiently replied each time. Just before we pulled into the station, I told Chloe I was going to tell her parents about us. This time, she hesitated. "What about my sister?" she asked. "What about her?" I replied. "There's nothing between us. Who cares what she thinks?" Chloe finally nodded, but she asked me to let her be the one to announce it. When we exited the station, both sets of parents were there waiting. Mia's break didn't start until that afternoon, so she wasn't there. I sat in the back of my parents' car with my mom, who held my hand and looked me over, saying I'd gotten thinner and darker after half a year away. I laughed, flexed my arm, and told her the freshman boot camp had made me leaner, not weaker. My parents laughed, happy to have me home. We drove straight to Mia's university to pick her up. She was just walking out as we arrived and ran over, thrilled to see us. I hadn't initiated contact with her once in the past 6 months. All the effort had been from her. I had already told her once we could only be friends, but she didn't listen. After that, I only replied selectively to her texts, ignoring anything that crossed the line. At the restaurant, our families gathered for dinner. Chloe and I sat together, but Mia squeezed in right beside me. As she sat down, she noticed our hands intertwined under the table. The color drained from her face. At one point, Mia's mom mentioned that Chloe would be graduating soon and should start thinking about finding a boyfriend. Chloe stood, lifted our joined hands, and said simply, "Leo and I are together." Her announcement stunned both sets of parents into silence. Then, a moment later, joyous laughter broke out. My dad and her dad immediately raised their glasses. "Looks like we're going to be family," her dad boomed. I watched Leo grow up. I couldn't ask for a better son-in-law. "And Chloe is a wonderful girl, so sweet-natured," my dad returned. "I'd be thrilled to have her as a daughter-in-law." The two of them dove into a round of compliments, drinking happily, and soon their talk turned to engagement parties, wedding gifts, and how many kids we should have. "The wedding gift will be generous. We love Chloe, and she deserves the best," my dad declared. "I'll handle the engagement party. Don't you spend a dime. I only have 2 daughters. Everything I have will be theirs one day," her dad slurred warmly. Our mothers were just as delighted, huddled together, whispering and glancing constantly at Chloe and me. But Mia didn't smile once. She sat pale as a ghost, barely touching her food the whole evening. Later that night, the shouting started. Mia and Chloe were having their first ever real fight, loud enough for us to hear through the walls. When I knocked and entered, I found Chloe, usually so gentle, standing her ground like a mother hen, arguing fiercely with her sister. "Leo loves me. He asked me out. How could you steal him from me?" Mia shrieked. "So what if he asked you out? You didn't say yes. What's wrong with me being with him now?" Chloe shot back. Their mom looked at me with a complicated expression. I gave her an apologetic nod and walked to Chloe, taking her hand. "Mia, the only reason I asked you was because you told me to," I said steadily. "At that point, I wasn't expecting us to get together because I knew you were going to choose Josh. You rejected me. Why are you making a scene now?" My words seemed to deflate her completely. I just wanted to," she stammered, trying to explain, "when all those people were laughing at me." I cut her off. "You chose to stay there and let it happen. Did you ever think about how I felt? And after that, both of us saw you with Josh. Was he forcing you to be there? Were you forced to meet his sister as his girlfriend? Have you even broken up with him yet?" My string of questions left her paler than ever, unable to defend herself. All she could do was tearfully insist she had only been pretending to be Josh's girlfriend, that they were never really together. "You know what you were really thinking, Mia. We've known each other our whole lives. I know exactly what was going through your head. If you had feelings for someone else, you should have just let me go." Mia had no reply. She fell silent. That night, Chloe came home with me. It was her official introduction to my parents as my girlfriend. She ignored Mia for the rest of the break, and I spent all my time with her, not caring what Mia was doing. Just before we were scheduled to return to school, Mia showed up at the door. Our parents were throwing us an engagement party the next day, and we were leaving the day after. "What did you want, Al?" I asked. Curious, Chloe and I followed her outside. Waiting there were Josh and his sister. "He just asked me to pretend to be his girlfriend," Mia said, addressing us but staring at them. "He said you were watching, Leo, and that he'd be humiliated if I said no. That's why I did it." Josh's sister looked shocked, glancing between her brother and Mia, clearly not expecting to be dragged into this. "Mia, you spent all your time with me. You agreed to be my girlfriend, and now you're backing out," Josh said, frowning at me like I was the one who stole her. "I didn't manage our friendship well, and for that I'm sorry," Mia said firmly. "I've always seen you as just a younger friend. I've never had romantic feelings for you." Her bluntness made both Josh and his sister scowl. "Just a friend," Josh shot back. "You came to my classroom every day. You texted me constantly. Why? I got hurt. You drove 30 minutes to see me and told my sister you felt bad for not taking better care of me as your girlfriend. That was just as a friend." Mia's face went white. She didn't know how to respond, her eyes darting nervously to me. "It's you," Josh suddenly yelled, pointing at me. "You forced her to do this, didn't you? You were afraid I'd steal her. But we're the ones in love. You can't break us up." "It has nothing to do with him. This was all my fault," Mia cried, jumping in front of me with her arms spread wide. "Excuse me, I think you're confused," I said calmly, holding up the hand that was clasped in Chloe's. Engagement rings glittered on both of our fingers. "Chloe and I are getting engaged tomorrow. Your business is your own." Josh froze, struck dumb. His sister grabbed his arm, stopping him from saying anything else. "I don't care what you were thinking," his sister said to Mia, her voice sharp but controlled. "You led my brother on and now you're trying to walk away. You owe us an apology." Mia could only hang her head and mumble apologies. Josh's sister dragged him away, clearly wanting nothing more to do with the situation. That evening, Chloe told me Josh's sister had called Mia and chewed her out for messing with her brother. The next day, our engagement party was. It was a simple but happy affair, with all our relatives gathered to celebrate with us. Afterward, Chloe pulled me aside. She was worried about Mia, who had been quiet and withdrawn all day. Yesterday's confrontation had clearly hit her hard. Chloe and I wanted to find Josh's sister. We explained the whole history between Mia and me, and how her brother had forced himself into the middle of it. When she heard that her brother had knowingly pursued Mia, even though he already knew about me, she was appalled. I told her the whole story, including how Chloe and I had gotten together. She sincerely apologized, saying her brother was responsible for breaking Mia and me up. I just shook my head, smiled, and left, holding Chloe's hand. I didn't realize Mia was standing right behind us until it was too late. She looked at us with a complicated, devastated expression. "Can we talk?" she asked. I gently refused. "Mia, we grew up together. You know how I am. We can't go back. Besides," I said, glancing at her sister, "I'm incredibly happy with Chloe." I know," she whispered. That day, Mia followed us home in a daze. She didn't even come out to say goodbye when Chloe and I left for the airport. 3 years later, the day after my college graduation, Chloe and I got married. Mia was the maid of honor, and she gave us a heartfelt blessing. It was a huge, beautiful wedding. I watched Chloe, looking absolutely radiant, walk down the aisle. I took her hand from her father and promised to spend the rest of my life making her happy. I slipped a ring on her finger, pulled her close, and kissed her deeply. In the audience, Mia was crying her eyes out, her mother trying in vain to comfort her. After the wedding, we moved into our new house. Mia, showing no interest in dating, moved into the house next door. When our son was born, Mia became a constant presence. She helped with the baby and the housework. And while it was a huge help, we worried it was stopping her from living her own life. Chloe tried to talk to her about finding a boyfriend and settling down, but Mia would just smile, shake her head, and keep cooing at our son, a look of pure joy on her face. Our jobs were local, and while Mia's salary wasn't high, her hours were flexible. Having her around saved us so much time and energy that eventually we stopped trying to persuade her otherwise. One Saturday night, Chloe and I came home from a much-needed date night. As we opened the door, we heard a voice from the living room. "Mama, sweetie, can you say Mama?" "Mama." Chloe and I froze in the doorway, staring at Mia, who was holding our son and beaming. We looked at each other, completely at a loss for words.